fast. If you're running a winter tire or snow tire in the spring or later spring, summer months, you're just going to wear that down super fast. And it's also not going to, you'd think, oh, well, maybe it's softer, so it's going to grip even better. Not really the case, again, because that's not how the tread's designed.
What is up, everybody? I have Jim to my right. Across from us, repeat guest, Rob Morell. We're talking today about tires. Why are we talking about tires, Jim? Not because cars are like your most favorite thing in the world, even though hunting should be. We're talking about tires because these are the things that take us hunting in general. You got to get to where you're going. For most of us, that's going to be your vehicle, and it's a very important component. And actually, for me, I got a lot of questions today, not asking for a friend, asking for me. A couple of years ago, Jim, I went to go hunt in Montana, and I didn't have good tires on my truck. Mm-hmm. Muckenhern was trying to convince me that I needed new tires before I went. I was trying to squeak one last hunt out of them. I told him that when the wires stick out, that just creates more traction.
Interesting approach.
And I got a flat, shockingly, a flat. And we ended up, because in our haste, we ditched my truck on the side of the road. I loaded we had a couple vehicles. We loaded all my stuff on buddy's vehicle, loaded to the gills, made it up, hunted for the week, and then he had to go back to town to do some other stuff, so he actually bought me a tire with a wheel.
What a guy.
And then that old wheel and tire remained in your old F-150 in the bed, taking up valuable space for probably the better part of a year and 4 months.
It was always at the ready, though.
You could always look at it as a traction enabler on that rear axle, too, for the truck.
Sure, a little extra weight.
A little extra weight.
It wasn't ready because it was still wrong, though. Am I mistaken in that, or did you get it fixed? So it was a fixed tire sitting there.
Yeah, no, it was fine. Yeah, it was perfectly good spare.
It was fixed.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, it was good. I had all the tires were for proper working order.
Okay, got it. So you had 5 that worked.
Yeah,
okay,
5 that worked. So, but here's the deal, though. I bought new tires for that truck.
Right.
They were great tires.
You did. You got General ATs.
General Grabber AT2s, yeah. And then I actually sold that truck not long. Somebody got a really nice set of tires with that truck.
Sure.
Now I have a new truck. I'm back to having essentially street tires on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think, and Rob will get into this, I think what you need to realize is, and the reason we're talking about tires, Mark, you said it's one of the most important things. I would say, Rob, and I'm curious your thoughts, it's the most important thing. Because even if you don't even have a motor at all in the truck, let's say there's something magical about that truck that you still enjoy having along with you, you can still tow it.
Okay.
Along with you. You know, you could tow it behind an RV or something like that if it really meant that much to you, sentimental or something. But you got no tires?
Bad news.
I mean, unless you're getting a flatbed tow truck to take you across country, it ain't happening.
It ain't going anywhere.
No. Those are at least in theory, they should be probably the only parts of your truck touching the ground the whole way out there.
Mm-hmm. That's my plan.
Very, very important. Rob, what would you say?
No, I'd agree. I mean, it's what's connecting your vehicle to the ground. Super important, not super sexy, which is, I think, why people don't look at it a whole lot, right? They look at adding more power, adding more suspension travel, or new wheels even, which wheels and tires, are coupled together literally and figuratively. But yeah, tires are like, I don't know, I've got this weird excitement around them. Don't know maybe as much as other people out there on them, but just something I, for whatever reason, have a fascination with. And it's something that, it's probably the single biggest impact that you can have by changing a tire to how your vehicle drives and how it feels. And if you look at all the other things, there's a lot of, that I talked about with power or suspension or handling stuff. There's generally multiple things you need to change in order to realize kind of a meaningful benefit, but tires is almost like, day one. I mean, I hear people say this all the time. Holy cow, I just got a new set of tires on my vehicle. I can't believe how much better it drives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, your fascination with tires is exactly why we brought you on here. And yeah, I think that is so true. How many times do you have people, even if it's just, let's say just noise, people get used to the drone in their car from old, tired out, dry rotted, whatever it is, tires, maybe they're cupping or something's going on. We'll talk more about this, I'm sure. They switch to a new set and all of a sudden they can hear themselves think while they're going down the road. Their gas mileage increases. The ride quality is sometimes dramatically better. I found that especially in the case of the heavy duty, I'm going to call them out right now, Ford F-350s. and F-250s, those things ride like a bag of rocks.
Yeah.
And like from the factory, and I get it, they're big heavy duty truck made to tow stuff and all that.
Yeah, I mean,
but if you're not doing all the towing of giant gooseneck trailers and things like that, you find that they ride terribly. And a lot of people I've known put different tires on them, and the ride quality is already just in and of itself so much better.
I feel like I've heard the analogy before. People are like, oh, I got no new shoes for my truck or new shoes for my referring to tires as shoes. But then like thinking about it, you think about like the different types of shoes the person can put on.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Like you could put on high heels. Jim, you wear heels a lot. That's not going to be very comfortable. But you put on a pair of
here
these.
Is supposed to cover that up. That's why we have all these tables and tires in front of me.
You put a pair of these nice old school Sauconys on, which actually, Jim.
So what you're rocking now? Nice.
Yeah, it is.
I'll hold it up for the audience here. If you know where to find these anymore, I was mowing the lawn in these the other day.
I can tell.
I think they quit making them, Jim.
Yeah.
I've been wearing this shoe for like the last
it looks like
8 years.
tread on the bottom of that thing.
My
looks a little worn
sandals that
out.
everybody gives me a lot of crap for, the whole bottom of them is made out of snow tires.
No kidding.
Yeah,
That does
they
look like
just
a-
cut out it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just cut a sandal out of a snow tire and put some straps on it and send you on your way.
It's kind of an interesting design because it's a sandal, so it's going to be pretty uncomfortable, like from a temperature standpoint in the snow.
That is actually ironic.
But interesting marketing.
We're a little off topic.
Sorry. All right.
Kind of.
Somewhat.
I digress.
But anyway, so if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice that there are actually tires and wheels on the table. So I brought along some visual aids, and Rob, you can help us break these things down. Now, what are we talking about? First off, like different types of tires that are going to be used frequently on trucks. We know many of you are probably driving SUVs as well. Your hunt rig. Generally speaking, we're going to be seeing more of, from the more benign all-season.
Mm-hmm.
We've got all-terrain.
Yep.
We've got mud terrain. We've got then all these other weird little spin-offs like mud and snow and all that. Like, what are these categories?
Yeah. So I think all-season tires are kind of an increasingly more popular style of tire, and I am not a very big fan of all-season tires.
Yeah.
I
same.
affectionately call them no-season tires because they can kind of handle all of the seasons in a pinch, but they don't really do any of them well. They're kind of a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none type of tire, and I would say they typically work better in mild to warmer climates. They're really quite bad in snow. So they're kind of more of a softer tire compound that'll do better in kind of moderate and warmer temperatures. I've had those on vehicles in the past. That's where they did okay. And then in the snow, they were not good, borderline. I won't say that they were dangerous. I didn't feel as comfortable or as confident driving with them. So that's kind of your all-season tire. Then you've got an all-terrain tire. And all seasons are primarily just going to be for on over-the-road type of driving. Then you've got an all-terrain tire, which this is one of them. These are designed for more, I'd say, for primarily over-the-road. But if you want to do a little, weekend off-roading, you're not going to be getting into stuff that's super gnarly, mud, rock. These are generally going to be a good pick for you for a couple of reasons. One is they'll do better in the colder temperatures. You can't really maybe see super well here, but the way that this tread is designed, there's a couple of different things that are going on. I don't know. You've got what are these like little squigglies on here? They're called sipes, and so this works to kind of pump out any water or snow that gets down into here and kind of keep this tread block dry. And
those are kind of like the skinnier little fissures that are kind of like not the main tread.
Right.
Basically, instead of it being really big, giant, blank, flat lugs on this thing, which we might see some of on that mud tire over there, but yeah, you've got all these other extra little openings in the tread.
I was also reading, Jim, via my printouts that on a previous episode of Spaghetti Shootout, which a person can check out on the Vortex Nation podcast YouTube page. You called them my damn printouts, but there's a lot of good information in here, and they were saying about the sipes that they also help they'll kind of like expand and grip as well.
Yeah. So it allows for that tread block to open up a little bit, depending on how it's being loaded, and get a little bit more contact patch. So really, kind of what you're trying to do with a tire at the end of the day is you're trying to have the most amount of contact with the medium you're driving over, and how the tire is designed, whether it's the tread pattern, or the compound, or the individual tread block, is really kind of tailored towards doing those things as well as it can. And then when you get into go back to that all-season tire, it's really trying to do a whole lot across the whole width of the tire, and therefore you don't really have the ability to do any one thing super well.
Yeah.
These are a little bit better just because of you have a little bit less variability and some symmetry going across from the middle down to the outside. And then also the compound is a little bit different than what's selected for an all-season tire.
Mm-hmm.
We have this little tire over here that I also brought in. This is kind of an all-season tire. It's pretty flat right now, so you can see, for one, knowing that it's not designed entirely to be off-road a lot, really soft. This sidewall here is also really soft and easy to be punctured by things like rocks and other stuff like that. But, this whole tire, all you got to do is sometimes look at an AT in an all-season, or sometimes you'll see A-S for all-season.
Yep.
Next to each other, and you can just tell that there's so much more heft to this AT. Understanding that people encounter rocks and all sorts of other things that are trying to poke into the tire, so you got kind of a heavier, thicker, meatier carcass here.
For sure.
And inherently, I think, much like with optics, we say optics are a game of trade-offs.
Mm-hmm.
Tires are always a game of trade-offs. You know
For sure.
what I mean? And so you're probably going to, by stepping up to a more aggressive, meatier, tougher tire like this, you may see a decrease in things like your ride quality, your gas mileage, or just
road noise.
Road noise. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
other little things like that. But it's because that you have consciously chosen that you wanted to put your eggs more so in the off-road basket, right?
Right, for sure. And comparison optics is a great one because you're generally talking about trade-offs with field of view and eye relief, or eye box and magnification and things like that. And tires are very similar with like tread wear and wet traction, dry traction, snow traction. How well is it going to do off-road and things like that. Road noise, noise vehicle and vibration and harshness, NVH. All those things. And so, if you go kind of along the spectrum from an all-season tire to maybe an all-terrain tire, and then you kind of turn it up to 11 on the off-road performance, but almost down to a 2 or a 3 on kind of the on-road performance, then you get into kind of the mud tire. And that's where, you were talking about this being beefier and a thicker sidewall compared to this all-season little guy off your Datsun. Then, you get over to a mud tire and your sidewall is super rigid. The tire is generally going to be heavier. The tread blocks on this guy are going to be way meatier, and they're going to probably have some features in here. These look like they got space for studs if you wanted to run that as well. And the tread block here, I don't know if you'll be able to see it super well, but is way different than that. They're bigger, they're chunkier. You don't have any of the sipes in here, but again, this is designed to kind of cut through mud, maybe a little bit of sand with this rib here, but really kind of get through that stuff and get to the hard ground that's underneath. And then these tread blocks are also, they have a little bit of a draft angle in here, so these are what you'd call a self-cleaning tire. And so as the tire is rotating, these draft angles allow for the mud or rock or whatever that gets stuck in here to, again, work its way out of the tread. Because if it gets stuck in here, you essentially just have a huge bald tire where you're not going to be able to get any traction and get moving through the mud and real nasty stuff off-road.
Yeah, not just that too, but eventually once you find yourself back on the road, you want that crap to get out of there as well. Because otherwise it's going to be imbalancing the tire and the wheel, and you're going to have all kinds of awful driving characteristics with that in there as well.
That's a good fun tip. If you feel your car driving super weird, your truck driving super weird, get out, take a look at the tires. Again, not a very sexy thing, but if you see a huge rock lodged in, between a couple of the tread blocks, that could be it, depending on, where it is, how big it is, or how many of them are in there, that sort of thing. So
wheel balance is a huge thing, and we're kind of talking tires here, but I know in Wisconsin, a lot of it will depend too on your wheel design. But in Wisconsin, I once had a set of snow tires, and usually us folks around here up north, a lot of us will get a set of cheapy wheels mounted to some nice snow tires that we just
like these Steelies.
Yeah, like some Steelers or something. You toss the whole setup onto the winter. That way you don't have to go into a tire shop and dismount your summer tires and mount up your winter tires. So I threw on the winter wheels and tires. I got them newer for that car, and I hadn't used that wheel before, and the snow kept getting packed up in the wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of the snow would fall out or melt up and all that, but then a lot of it would stay compacted in the wheels, and it was almost undrivable.
Yeah.
And not to mention unsafe, too, in slippery conditions, because the car is, their contact patch is constantly changing if you're vibrating like that, which is very bad for grip. But yeah, so I would always have to get out, and I'd have to with my hands like poke out all the snow out of the wheels in order to just be able to drive the thing comfortably. So yeah,
What a pain.
It was a pain,
and so it was kind of defeating the purpose. You're like, oh, I want this thing to drive better in the winter, and then you're constantly having to deal with it not driving good.
Yeah, and I was also kind of like, oh, this whole wheel and tire set will make it really easy, and it made it really hard. So it was a pain. That's just life sometimes.
Going back to what you were saying earlier, Rob, talking about like the differences and the trade-offs, I would have to think like because of that, when a person is selecting a tire, and it's kind of like the classic thing, what are you going to use it for? Like same with optics, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I need a good scope for deer hunting. Okay, well, what kind of deer hunting? You know what I mean? Yes. Like I need a good tire for hunting. Okay, well, what kind of hunting? Like you said earlier, Jim, do I need a good tire that's my daily driver, and I'm gonna, I need it to handle the gravel when I turn into the parking area, or I'm gonna be only on gravel roads, maybe a little bit of mud, or am I really overlanding, off-roading? In the mountains and mud, you
gotta do an assessment. Can I give my rant now?
Talk about the assessment.
Can I give make an assessment? So, and then Rob, by all means, weigh in on this rant as well. Disagree or agree, whatever. But I think everybody needs to do a really hard look at what they actually need their rig, truck, SUV, whatever it is, to do come hunting season. And it's been a really popular thing on social media these days for people to build out these just insane overlanding rigs. It's got a kitchen in it, it's got a bathroom, a shower, the whole thing. I mean, you're basically fitting your entire house into a Toyota Tacoma, which we all know, of course, is a little tiny, not real truck.
Shots fired.
Anyway,
at Ryan Muckenhurst.
Yeah, mostly at Ryan Muckenhurst. Anybody else with one?
Have you ever heard about Ryan purchasing that Tacoma? And like the not painstaking, but like how selective he was down to the exact model and trim level of everything that he wanted.
He wasted all that time and in the end still got a Tacoma.
Jim, you're upsetting a lot of people out there right now.
I know.
I will say this.
I do it in jest.
When I hear Ryan talk about that story, I wouldn't have done anything differently. And I mean, at least as far as the process goes, I maybe would have selected a different vehicle at the end of the day. That's neither here nor there. But it's like you hear that story and it's like, well, this guy really thought through what he wanted to do. With the truck and like
it's a great.
And he loves his truck.
He loves his truck. It's a great hunting vehicle. I've got the Tundi now.
You do,
because bigger is better, Jim. We know that. But man, on some of those small tight roads, stuff like that, a smaller truck can be a definite advantage. I'm not going to say that it's not.
Yeah, they're not. It's not a bad thing. They're not bad trucks. I love to rib.
We like
Tacoma.
to rib.
I like to rib Tacoma guys and Ryan especially. But okay, so I think people though. Everybody's into the overlanding thing, and I think everyone gets a grandiose image in their head of like, yeah, I'm gonna go cross country, and I'm gonna get to the state that I'm hunting in, and boy, about the time I get there, man, I'm gonna just hit the trails. I'm gonna be off road for days, and my tires won't hit the pavement for days, and I'll be doing miles and miles and miles off road, hitting just crazy rock crawling, sections, and I'll be bahaing across deserts and things, and it starts getting pretty awesome. I will agree. I would love to do that. If you know that hunt, let me know because I'm going to build a rig to do it with you. But in reality, what happens is, especially for us Midwesterners and East Coast folks, we hitch up our truck, we load it up with our goodies, we drive on pavement 95% of the time until we get there, and then we basically go down a gravel road, which any tire, even this poor little all-season over here, is made to be able to accomplish. We drive down a gravel road, we park in a parking lot, and then we do the rest of the all-terrain and off-roading to our spot. And a lot of times
invest in a good set of boots.
Indeed, yeah. There's your real
right.
your real off-road tire. But a lot of times you run into things where off-roading isn't even permitted in a lot of areas, or and not even to the level or extent that you think it would be. Sometimes you find a place that, yeah, I can off-road, but only on this trail. You know, you're not going to be able to just free roam, disperse off-road wherever you wish, as much as I think that'd be cool, but that's just not, it's not allowed unless you're on some like crazy awesome private land with an owner who doesn't care. I don't know. But anyway, so I think that, you know, maybe not going for the most intense, most extreme off-road tire and sacrificing comfort on the road, which you'll be doing most of the time. I don't know if that's the best route to go.
Well, probably tire longevity too. Like if you're doing a lot of road time with like a mud terrain tire, I mean correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like a softer tire. It's going to wear down quicker than
you'll
like
chew
an
through
AT.
it a lot faster.
You will. And so I think like, and some people, you know, maybe you got money to burn and you're like, well, I don't care if I'm wearing through tires. I want these tires anyway because they look awesome, and I know if and there's always the like, well, if I run into that situation, at least I know I'm good. But also there are performance aspects on road that I think are important to consider. You know, a really high performance off-road tire, like a mud terrain tire, it won't perform as well on road.
For sure.
It's not, you know, that it's you know, oh yeah, well I'm getting it, you know, just to do better at off-road and everything else will stay the same. It's going to perform less ideally. Gas mileage won't be as good, and I've mentioned ride quality a couple of times. I have ridden in some vehicles with like intense off-road tires. The ride quality is terrible. Oftentimes they're a big, heavy tire. Rob, maybe you know stuff about unsprung mass and stuff, and your whole setup. I mean, what do you think about my rant there?
Yeah, I think I would agree with pretty much everything you said. I mean, one thing to keep in mind is this sidewall of the tire is basically an extension of your suspension system. So if you look at everything from the ground all the way up to the body, like that whole thing is a mass spring damper system. So when you have a super rigid sidewall tire like a mud tire, that is going to inherently be stiffer. So you have you're going to have that stiffer element in the whole system design of your suspension. More of like a
jarring feeling,
right? You just don't have that extra kind of spring damper effect that you do with a softer or super soft, by comparison to these two tires, sidewall on this all season tire. So, I mean it's really like what's important to you. So if you've got I think one of the things too that comes down with that's difficult, at least for me, and why I spend time looking at tires is you don't end up buying them very frequently. It's not like I'm going and buying a gallon of milk every week, or I'm buying a toilet paper or whatever it is. And it's like, oh, I really didn't like that thing. I can buy it again next week. It's not a big deal. You're generally running a set of tires for a couple of years, and they're pretty expensive. So you want to have a good feeling that you're getting you're making the right buying decision. If that's not important to you, you've got the space to have extra sets of wheels and tires like you're talking about. And you've got, the money there, you want to spend the money on that. That's something I spend money on. Tires are important to me. So that's typically something where I'll spend more money on a tire than maybe an average person would. Then I would say just get whatever you want, right? And it's like, have a set of mud tires. And like, if it's more important for you to be able to get out of whatever scenario you're in, and you understand it's going to be a harsher ride, it's going to be louder, you're going to have worse gas mileage, tires are going to wear faster, like have at it. And then when you're, driving your truck every day normal, just throw some all-terrains on and run that way. But
sure.
It's kind of tricky though, like even if you have that ability, like, okay, for instance, like, I mean, even like when I lived in Washington, like a lot of our hunts were 3 to 6 hours away, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have that that's like an in-state hunt. You still have 3 to 6 hours of driving.
Right.
You might be living in Wisconsin here, you're, going out west to whatever state, you got 10 to 15 to 20 hours of driving.
Right.
Like, you might it might be beneficial to have that more aggressive tire once you're there.
Right.
But you still got to get there.
You got to get there. And that's
what I don't know, and I don't have the answer for that.
Do you want to struggle, or do you want to be uncomfortable or struggle for the 95% of your trip out to your hunt, or struggle in the 5% where you're in a little bit more gnarly of a off-road situation than you had planned for, where this maybe would have been a breeze to get out of, and this is just going to require a little bit more time and effort with an all-terrain.
There's your optics comparison. Like, you're going to go on one hunt for Coos deer in Arizona once every couple years. and you're going to hunt Midwest Wisconsin for all the other times, like, do you want to get the 15 by 50s or the 18 by 50 binoculars? Maybe you do. But, for I think the majority of people, if you think about, what you're going to be using it for 80 to 90% of the time, it's unlikely. And then, the other thing is you got to consider what it's going to be like when you get there as well. Those colder temperatures we mentioned, snow, ice, these mud tires over here, and we can go into too, like I've made specific selections in these cases and people can disagree or agree or whatever. But so this is a mud and snow tire, which is kind of interesting. You started to see some of these micro categories or whatever, or smaller categories within categories pop up now. Certain aspects of this tire would do well in snow, but it's important to note that, that says mud and snow. I still wouldn't necessarily think of this as being a phenomenal ice tire. And, we in Wisconsin have to deal a lot with ice here. Now, I think I can maybe stud these, which could help.
Yeah, it looks like you got some sockets for them. But
Yeah.
then, you got to understand what your local regulations are, because some places are just like no studs, doesn't matter. Some are kind of like polymer or composite studs only, and some you can just do whatever you want. You can run, metal studded tires and whole 9 on it. So,
but I picked this tire for a number of reasons, and one of the reasons being, this is kind of on. I did this in lieu of a UTV or something like that on a truck out at our property, and so I knew it was going to be kind of like the farm truck. So indeed, I do get into out there a lot of mud, and I'm kind of one of those instances where it's like private land. I can kind of go wherever I want. As long as, it's within what I want to do. I don't want the whole thing to be tire tracks. But, I'm going to be in a lot of mud, and I can confirm those do really well in mud. And I'm going to be maybe going through snow in the winter, but I don't anticipate encountering a lot of ice, and I don't anticipate going on tarmac or asphalt a whole lot.
Right, it's not your daily driver.
Right. So that was I decided that because I'm like all in on the heavy duty off road stuff. But this tire over here, this is the Yokohama Geolander. I didn't say Yoko Ono.
Well, now you did.
Now I did.
Now you
but
did.
Mark and I kept accidentally saying that earlier. This is the Yokohama Geolander. I'm not actually partial to one particular AT tire, I will say. I think
You're not.
I've almost tried them all. Falcon, Wild Peak, Yokohama Geolander. You've got the...
Tried the BFGs at all?
I have the AT and the AT2s, and then the Goodyear Wrangler and the Wrangler DuraTrack and all that stuff. I think if you're in the AT category, what I find everybody when they read reviews about ATs is they want to see how close to a full high performance like off-road tire they are. Mm-hmm. And then they also want to see then like how crazy off-road is that, and then also like how close is it to like an R-Comp nice street tire. You know what I mean? Because they're like, can I get the best of both worlds? And you can't.
No,
I think
inevitably you cannot.
All the ATs are pretty much like for driving really, really far distances on road and then going off-road a tiny, tiny bit to get to a parking spot. I think they're all good. But anyway, yeah, this was a setup that we used on the Subaru, and we went to Wyoming and back, and we did a bunch of other stuff with the Subaru with this setup here, and it did phenomenal because most of the time we were on road.
Did we do Arizona with this one too, this tire, or a different tire?
No, we had the General Grabber AT2s for Arizona.
Why'd you switch?
I switched because I really liked these gold braid wheels, and I wanted to put.
That's right.
And they were a different size wheel than the ones that the General Grabbers were mounted to, so I had to get different tires.
Well, and I remember being like, Jim, why'd you do that? Because I liked the AT2s because they were a little bit more of a.
They were more aggressive.
A little more aggressive tire, and you wanted the shiny bronze wheel.
You liked the way that the General Grabber AT2s looked. Let's be honest, which is totally valid.
Yeah, and that's part of the discussion too, right? And the consideration is. People take a lot of pride in their vehicles, so they want it to look cool too. So, there are definitely certain tires that look cooler than others. I don't
love AT tires that look really benign and boring.
Mm-hmm. So, and I would say
look good.
When I look at these, I would say for an AT, like I think they performed great, right? Yeah. But like as far as like a aggressive tread pattern, I would call this like a moderate AT. Is that accurate at all, or is that inaccurate? So. You guys look at a lot more tires.
It's mark accurate, yeah.
Yeah, mark accurate.
Okay, so
that's a new phrase.
I don't have a better way of explaining it. I don't know that there's subcategorizations within a category per se. Right. It'll kind of come out in the performance data on how it does in the different conditions.
I'd say from just the eyeball test. there's less space between the lugs on this tire than there were on the General Grabber 82. The lugs are also smaller and higher in number. So there's smaller lugs, there's less space between them, so they're more tightly compact. And there's more sipes on this as well, which, you know, could help you in rain and snow. And so that would lead my eyeball to believe that this is probably a little bit more of like a road-oriented one than that tire. But I mean, I don't know, Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And if you look at kind of how this tread pattern is set up, it's really set up to get everything out of the outside of the wheel with respect to the water and the snow that you had mentioned. And yeah, all the things you said are correct. So yeah, this I would say is definitely more oriented to being a over-the-road AT tire versus a off-road AT tire, if that makes sense.
One thing that surprised me, because when I was like, oh, an AT, that's going to be good for, like, you know, it's my do-all. It's my street tire, it's my commuting tire, it's my mud tire, and it's also like my winter snow tire, because I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to clear snow. It's got the larger tread, and then what was surprising to me though is like that's not necessarily the case. And maybe we talked about this later, but like I guess that's why we have snow tires, because the compound
is inherently different
as it gets colder, and just like a regular AT is like it gets harder.
Right. Yeah, and then what happens is all of this cool design that went into this, it doesn't work the same way because the tire does not flex and move the same way it was designed to within that operating temperature range. So yeah, that's why snow tires exist, because there has not been a way. I've been thinking of a couple ways of doing it.
I've always been like, I don't need snow tires. I got ATs.
You mean like you've been engineering ways where you're like, maybe
how could I have a tire compound that could be adaptive to different environmental conditions? And I haven't come up with a way to do it in an economical way. And I'm sure there are much smarter people that are working at tire companies that have already thought of this thing, and it just hasn't found its way there. It's one of those first order physics things where you kind of got to play the hand that you're dealt. When you're making a material selection on compound, you've only got so much range that you can work in where it's going to stay in that kind of pliable state before it gets either super soft if you're running a winter tire or snow tire in the spring or later spring, summer months. You're just going to wear that down super fast. And it's also not going to, you'd think, oh, well, maybe it's softer, so it's going to grip even better. Not really the case, again, because that's not how the tread's designed.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it. It's the compounds, the tread design. I mean, a lot of times people, I used to think, as just an armchair enthusiast, I'd look at the tread pattern and I was like, they pretty much just handed it over to some guy with an art degree,
and
they asked him to make it look really cool and repeatable, you know. But there's so much technology and research and development that goes into the actual tread pattern. I mean, that's even mind-boggling stuff, you know. You can't write tire companies off as just being like, you know, all they do is make these big rubber carcasses. There's so much technology and engineering that goes into tires. It's unbelievable.
When you really get into it, it's a very complex kind of dynamic equation you're trying to solve, because you've got all these different parameters that you want to design for, and all the different conditions, whether it's temperature, rain, snow, ice, whatever it is.
And all the different vehicles.
All the different vehicles, load ratings, aspect ratios. I mean, you can go into kind of the numbers that you see on the side of the tire, but it's like, yeah, you might have a tread pattern that works well for a certain width or a certain load rating, and then it's not going to be, you know, well suited for others. And then you got like, how does it perform when there's stuff lodged in the tread blocks? How does it perform when it's unequally worn or unequally loaded? There's just so much stuff that would go into it. You know, if I could go and do like an internship at just for fun at a tire company, it would be fascinating to learn what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Even being a tire enthusiast, like that goes into the design of it first week or month.
I mean, all right, tire companies, if you're looking for free labor, contact.
Just to disclose, I don't have a lot of free cycle time right now, so yeah.
Well, I mean, you volunteered.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you know, this is totally getting outside the realm of the off-road and kind of hunting truck tires and stuff. But you see this race teams, and they use their tires to tune their car and their suspension and everything, and they're actually individually taking the temperatures of the outside, middle, and inside of the tire to see kind of how, maybe if they have to adjust camber or something in the vehicle, or they have to adjust tire pressure, and tire pressures in and of themselves, and there's varying ones that perform best with your vehicle. They do a lot of work so that we can, as consumers, kind of buy them and slap them on and
fill
get
it
them
up to
work.
the pressure. And
But when you kind of start to peel back that layer, that's where I start to appreciate. Actually, no, I'm not going to peel back too far. I'm glad somebody
I'll leave that to the experts.
does that for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some of the things, so like this is just kind of interesting, getting into a little bit of the wheel and tire stuff as well. And so I don't know, maybe people are listening to this thinking like, well, just give me a recommendation on a wheel and tire. And I can't do that because of what we talked about. There is so much application specific. What vehicle do you have? What are you going to do with it? Are you towing? Are you doing all that stuff? But just to go into a few of the thought processes behind the ones that I chose here. So like this one that went on the Subaru that we took to Wyoming. So this actually, if you're familiar with some race car wheels and stuff, this wheel manufacturer is Braid, and they make some pretty nice wheels. They make a lot of wheels that go on race cars, rally cars, which are super cool, and formula cars, road racing cars. They're known for making wheels in any different type of like a offset and stuff that you might need, which is a whole different topic. And they make really, really strong wheels. So these wheels are actually the type that would go on a rally car, which is fitting being on a Subaru. That's I thought it was really neat.
Are these forged aluminum?
They are. Yeah. And so
you've taken a few rally classes, haven't you, Jim?
I have at times. Yes, and it is a lot of fun. But anyway, so I had these wheels, and I was like, well, let's put them on the Subaru. Let's make it cool. It'll be fun, even though we are going to do the road thing and probably park in a parking lot. But because these are such strong wheels, they make them particularly strong for rally cars. They don't necessarily go for the super lightweightness. They don't want to sacrifice weight for strength, or strength for weight, whichever one. But anyway, so this actual setup here with the Yokohama Geolander ATs on it is kind of a hefty setup considering the size. So it's a 215/75 R15, which Rob.
Hey, maybe explain the numbers.
Which Rob.
Yeah.
So the first number, 215, is
215 is the section width in millimeters. So that's basically how wide the tread patch area is. So this
if you're
right
watching
here,
on YouTube, we're kind of just
if
you looked at the car from the back and you just measured, left to right how wide the tire was, that's pretty much what that is.
Yep.
So 75 is the next number here. What's that?
So 75 is what's called the aspect ratio, and that is the percentage of thickness of the sidewall relative to the width. Mm-hmm. So if you had a 215/100, that would mean that the sidewall was 100% of the width of the tread patch.
So it's just as tall off of the rim.
Yep.
It's just as tall to the edge of the tire as it is the tire width.
Okay.
You typically won't see that.
That's pretty rare, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, on like street cars.
But just to take it to the limit, that's what that would mean. Yeah. So what you see here with the 75 means that this tread height here, or the sidewall height, is 75% of the dimension of this 215 tread width.
Got it. So multiply 215, which is millimeters, by 75%. And that's what you got.
So basically the thought here is bigger the number, the taller the tire is going to be.
Okay. More rubber
this way, and that'll give you generally like a more compliant, more comfortable for the same otherwise the same tire. If you have a taller sidewall, it'll be a little bit more comfortable of a ride.
Yeah.
And then the last number here, R15, is just saying that this is a tire for a 15-inch diameter wheel.
Right.
So interesting mix of metric and standard units.
It is
for reasons unknown, but that's what it is.
And of course, much like optics with MOA and MRAD, and like our linear measurements with inches and centimeters, and like other measurements with all sorts of different ways of measuring the same things, you can also find tires in like a 33 by 12.5 by 15, which is a 33-inch tire, and that's measuring basically ground to top of tire.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you have the 12.5, which is the width. Yeah, so it's all over. But I found actually on Tacoma World Forum, throw a bone to the Tacoma guys. On the Tacoma World Forum, they've got a tire size calculator.
Yeah.
And it'll actually show you kind of what tires would look like side by side. You can compare tire size. It's really nice.
Yep.
You just Google Tacoma World tire size calculator. But anyway, so back to this thing. So the wheel was decided, and then beyond that, we had to figure out a tire that could go on it. So I had to do a little measurement and a little looking up on some forums as to what the Forester could fit. Now, this is also something you need to consider. I like on off-road cars, I like a smaller wheel with a lot fatter looking rubber from a side profile. I think
Jim,
it looks neat.
You're going right into what I was wanting to talk about next, and actually my question with that, and maybe you're probably going to get into it right now, is a lot of people choose tires or choose wheels. You want your wheels to look good because you like them for this reason, and some people love a really big wheel,
sure,
and a skinny small tire, or maybe you're even forced into that smaller tire.
A thinner sidewall.
Sometimes.
Because you have that really big wheel. So what's optimal there? Say what you're going to say and then maybe answer my question.
Well, so it's my opinion on aesthetics, first off.
Okay.
I like to see more rubber from a side view when I'm looking at more of an off-road type vehicle. I do think that tends to be what you see most commonly on off-road vehicles, and I'm only going to be able to speculate because we live in Wisconsin. I don't get the chance to off-road a lot like people out west, maybe Arizona, Utah, Nevada. I think that's what you see a lot because you tend to get a lot more of this really meaty sidewall. You're still getting a nice big tire, which can give you a number of benefits. It can give you better ground clearance. It can give you better ability to go over large obstacles and stuff like that. I also think it maybe has something to do when guys air down their tires. That's me speculating. But I think that if you've got more sidewall, then you can air down your tires, and therefore you kind of look at tires like feet and think of feet think of having your foot jammed into a little track racing spike. It's real just mushed in there, and then do you want to go rock climbing with that? Versus if you could have your feet basically be like bare feet, and of course, minus getting cut by rocks and stuff, but if you had monkey feet and you could spread your feet out and grip onto stuff, if you've got all this sidewall and you can air your tires down and make this huge contact patch that can kind of undulate over obstacles, I think that helps. That's kind of at least my...
That might be a fun follow-on topic if we
get
any interest in this. It's we could do a next level
a
tire design.
Level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still going to stick tire 101 here. But anyway, so that's, for me and what we're doing, it's kind of aesthetics. But where was I? Can't remember. Oh, the size. Oh, well, funny enough, so going to a 15-inch tire or wheel on the Subaru, we had to actually go down in size in brakes, which is weird, but we actually increased power. So I'll get into that because you need to consider, based on what wheel you choose, it's got to be able to clear your brake calipers and other suspension components because you're probably going to have ball joints and you're going to have calipers and brackets and your disc rotors and things like that. It's all inside of your wheel, and so your wheel has to fit around that. And so, funny enough, here's a little 12-inch wheel.
All's got to fit inside of this space here.
Right.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's a little 12-inch wheel off of a Datsun, which has, the whole car is 1,700 pounds. But so, anyways, the front brakes on the Subaru Forester, the stock ones, they're these big kind of floating caliper design. They're big old honking things. Usually, you have to go down to a 16-inch. Really wanted to run these wheels. I had a set. This is kind of a, I guess not everybody is able to say this, but I had a set of Subaru STI, WRX STI front brake calipers laying around.
Oh, yeah.
So we just swapped them.
I tripped over
the mounts
just
were
the other
same.
day, Jim.
Yeah, exactly. So we swapped the fronts, and then these wheels were able to slip right over those. So anyways, that's what we did. And lo and behold, this setup worked, and we did actually get a little bit better brake performance on the front thanks to that. But it was a bit hefty. Now, kind of getting into, I don't know, Robin, do you have any comments too about that? Open to the floor. If you don't,
on just the wheel size and
just kind of this setup. This is this was, I figured, again, mostly on road, a little bit of off road, kind of going for aesthetics. This is just the setup for our hunt rig in that particular application.
Yeah. Maybe the only thing to add is if you look at the overall weight of the wheel and tire assembly or combination, if you're able to drop weight on that whole setup. So as an example, you mentioned that these braid wheels are heavy because you want that durable, you want that impact resistance and whatever that these were designed for from a rally standpoint. If you're able to go, like let's say you can trade off some strength as an example. You can go to a lighter weight wheel. That will pay dividends in a few different ways. One is on acceleration and braking because you have less rotational mass that you need to stop.
Yeah.
And then another is just on kind of turn response. So that's probably more of a thing for on-road or on-track driving than it is necessarily for off-road. But those are things to consider. You'll get probably an improvement on fuel economy as well with lower rotating mass. But that's something kind of universally beneficial.
Yeah.
So things to consider there. Yeah.
A little bit better ride quality with less unsprung mass, I've found.
That's kind of an interesting thing. I think that is maybe more of a placebo effect than it is actual.
Do you think?
Something. Because if you look at, again, kind of like
taking sugar pills, Jim?
The free body diagram of your car to the ground, assuming that the wheel and tire never leaves the ground, which we'll just make that assumption that's correct. Really, the thing
were you driving with Jim in Arizona? Car left the ground.
I was not.
Oh yeah, that's another story.
But in any event, I think there may be some small improvement on ride quality, but I think it's largely perceived with a lighter weight wheel and tire setup. It's really going to be on your suspension setup that's connecting the body of the vehicle to the wheel and tire, again, because that wheel and tire is connected to the ground.
I do think that the two have a correlation, like your suspension and your particularly your dampers, your shock absorbers, and the tire and weight and things. And actually it's possible. Well, it's possible that you're being polite and you're saying that is absolutely true, and this isn't even an argument at all. But like, because I've seen sometimes in cases where people put on these big old meaty bad boys on their car, right? And they don't do anything at all to the suspension. They got these old worn out shocks and things.
Right.
And maybe in this case, the wheel is slightly leaving the pavement. Eventually, it does wind up because you get what we referred to earlier as this cupping. This happened to me as a high school kid with a Jeep Wrangler and 33-inch tires that had no business being on that car.
Yeah.
Now, 33-inch tires find themselves on Jeeps all the time. I had a 99 Jeep Wrangler TJ. That's kind of the chassis designation. But 33-inch tires on those things all the time. My setup was not very good. And what we had found after doing a little bit of research into it, and I was doing this research with somebody who knew far more than I did as a high school kid, but was that essentially the shock absorbers were doing a very good job keeping up with all that giant heft and weight out there. And of course, I'd probably had geometry change with like low offset wheels, and they pushed the tires way out there too, which didn't help. But the wheels eventually were skipping, like as I go down the road. And of course, as they did that, each time they hit the ground, they would kind of chuff a little bit of the rubber off, and so they were wearing in this fashion that looks a bit like if you saw the big lugs on the side, they kind of looked like they were getting scalloped out.
Yeah. Yep.
And then of course that worsened itself over time, and again the shock absorbers couldn't keep up, and so the tires were sort of probably microscopically skipping down the road and just wearing themselves away. And I did wonder sometimes if that was because I had this just big honking setup and I didn't do anything at the time to the suspension.
That's interesting.
Of course, there's alignment, too, that could have been at play.
Well, so, I've seen similar things happen. So my old Buell Blast motorcycle that I had, it's my first motorcycle, I did a bunch of work to it, so it didn't happen on mine, but on the factory bikes, because there was no compensator on the rear sprocket at all. Basically, and it was just a single cylinder. It's like a half of a Sportster motor. There's essentially these micro pulses that had from the engine through the transmission that had no way of essentially smoothing themselves out. So you'd have this micro stutter event that would happen on those tires, and it would cause them to wear prematurely.
And in a very odd fashion, too.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Unexplainable.
Yep. And then, so
that is interesting.
That might be a fun thing to go through again, if there's interest on kind of going through the free body diagram on kind of what the whole vehicle system looks like.
Right.
That might be like a dozen or so people out there that are interested in seeing that, but it might be fun later on or offline for us to do that.
Yeah. But going over to the big mud terrain tires that I have over here, now this is actually, and people can totally give me crap for this because this is on a Toyota Hilux, a right-hand drive, which is essentially like a Japanese Tacoma, but
that kind of makes it even cooler,
but it's
right?
got the heavy duty fully boxed in frame. It's not that little U-channel little sheet metal frame like the Tacoma had. Anyways, no, you guys can give me crap for that. It's fine. But in this case, that car is very underpowered. I don't have one of the cool diesel ones. I got one of the little gasser ones. Very underpowered. You got to wring the thing's neck to actually get anything out of it. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go up to these big mud terrain tires. And I was going bigger than the stock setup, which is a whole conversation in and of itself. But, of course, you go to a bigger tire. If you think of the tire as a lever, you're making the lever all the way at the outside a lot longer. So, Rob, I'm sure you know the science behind this, but basically then that requires, in order to get moving, it requires more force.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, you're spot on. Yep.
Granted, I would suppose it maintains momentum maybe better?
Yeah, it would. You probably have a little bit better angular momentum, but then again, you're going to pay for it on the back end with braking, right? So if you maybe have more, I guess, freewheeling momentum if you're coasting, but then when you want to brake, the brakes have to work harder because you got, again, that longer lever to work against you.
Sure.
Because your brake's still the same size, right?
Exactly, yeah. And they're not great now that I've done this. But I did try to go, so what I did was I looked for the lightest weight setup that I could find.
Of mud tires?
And wheel.
Okay.
And
sure.
Conveniently, Toyota pretty much, because they're still making the same truck now they were making 30 years ago, they haven't changed the wheel bolt pattern for it to go onto the lugs.
Nice.
And they haven't changed a whole lot of other stuff, even the hub size. So I could buy wheels and tires that were designed for a 2021 TRD Pro Tacoma, and I could slap them on a 1990 whatever Hilux. So anyway, I looked for the lightest weight ones possible. These are Motegi Trail Light wheels. I think that they're probably like these are a big old. If they're not forged, they're definitely like flow formed or something nice like that. Mm-hmm. These are a big old hefty, strong rally wheel. These all they have to do is basically
those are probably cast.
Get me around a farm. They're probably cast,
but
they're like 21 pounds for a 16-inch off-road wheel, which is pretty light. I mean, you won't find any other wheel in the category that light. I couldn't. And then the Evolution, these are Cooper Evolution MTs, and they're a mud and snow tire. They were lighter by every other mud terrain, by, I think the next closest was 10 pounds heavier.
That's
per
a
tire.
lot.
So those are like 48-pound tires.
Yeah.
So altogether, that wheel and tire combo, which seems really heavy, but again, when you compare it, this is the lightest possible combo that I could find at like 69.5 pounds per corner.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I was like trying to just give my little, this little underpowered Toyota as much grace as I could by going as light as possible. And it's actually proven to be okay. Like my braking isn't as good as it once was. My ride quality I found to be just as good, if not better. And overall, the gas mileage I haven't really even noticed actually surprisingly a huge difference in. But that was kind of the thinking behind that. I'm guessing because this tire is so much lighter weight than anything else out there, it's probably got a thinner sidewall.
Yeah, could be. I mean,
or something.
Yeah, thinner sidewall, or just overall
less steel bands in it, or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Without taking it off and looking at it, it'll be actually without cutting a cross section of it or finding a cross section, it'd be tough to tell. But yeah, those things would all seem to make sense.
Oh, thanks for getting that rock out of there, Mark. Yeah. But I mean, in the end, for what I've asked it to do, and I've already asked it to do a lot, it's really not that old. But I mean, I haven't gotten any punctures in it or anything. And we're in Wisconsin, so I'm not rock crawling it. I'm mostly going through grass and mud and weeds and snow, which isn't particularly pokey.
You get some sticks out there, though, and stuff like that.
Yeah, you get some sticks and stumps and, that sort of thing. Or you get the, of course, occasional thing that a farmer left in a field many years ago. Yep. But I luckily haven't found any of that. So, but I just figured if we could give a little bit of an idea. Again, this isn't the podcast to give people specific recommendations on, get this tire. But those are just a few reasonings behind some wheel and tire setups. Going bigger, and everybody always wants to go what's the max size tire I can throw on this truck?
Right.
And a lot of times they'll want to know without lifting it or with only a 1 or 2 inch lift.
Oh, thanks for getting to my next two questions, actually, Jim.
Yeah. Yeah. Rob, have you, I know you're kind of more into like the, road cars and stuff like that. You did thankfully do some research on off-road tires for us prior to this, but like, what do you think about when people start messing with the size and things of tires, and even the wheels, changing things like, offsets and backspacing and size of wheels and all that? Like, what do you think about that?
I think it's your car, and generally speaking, as long as you understand kind of the trade-offs that you're making, you'll probably be okay. What you'll find is, depending on who you're taking your wheel and tires to get mounted, they won't mount them. So some places have like a specific deviation from OEM standard that they'll allow for you to run a different wheel and tire size in order to still be within kind of an acceptable margin of error, so that you have accuracy on all the things that are important when it comes off of the production line, without getting into too much specifics there. So that's important from an overall diameter size or diameter standpoint for the wheel assembly, for the tire, essentially. When you get into different things like offsets, backspacings, widths, things like that, just the things to understand there is that's probably going to change how your car or truck drives. It's going to change where the center of gravity resides on the wheel and tire, and kind of on the whole suspension assembly. So depending on what you're trying to do, it might be beneficial. If you're trying to go for a specific look on your vehicle, that's all good too. Just understand there's probably going to be some driving performance trade-offs that you're making for those aesthetics. Like I'll see guys that run super deep wheels and they look awesome. You can almost sit like on the inside of some of them, like some older muscle cars, or some trucks will even run really deep dish wheels. And that's fine. You're just essentially, if you don't have the offset of the wheel, so basically where the wheel hub is, or where the wheel is bolting to the hub on the vehicle, if that's not also properly taken into account, you're going to have a lot more poke for your wheels or for your tires sticking out. So they'll be outside of your fenders, which can be problematic for like throwing debris at other cars, or just
can get you pulled over.
If you have a really bad situation and you don't have enough suspension travel paired with that, you can basically just wipe out your whole fender of your vehicle. I've seen that happen. That's a real treat for people to fix that
like
one.
Bump stops or something that are properly adjusted.
Yeah, exactly. So like all that stuff it's just kind of like, as long as you know what you're getting into, generally you'll be okay. But you got to understand kind of what the, I guess, consequences legally, performance-wise, aesthetically are for kind of doing those sorts of things.
Potentially safety.
Safety, yeah. Safety's a big one. That's one of the things, too. I think back to the first podcast I was on, I recommended that people take a look at their tires. And it was like, it's like, check your tread depth, man. And it's important, especially once you get into more adverse driving conditions. I mean, hydroplaning's not fun. I've had that. That's happened to me one time. That's no bueno. And then just driving in the Midwest up here, you get into some gnarly snow events or ice events, and it's like, you lose control of a several 1,000-pound hunk of steel all of a sudden, and it can get pretty sketchy. So anyways, tires are like, again, not a very sexy topic, but super important, and for me, enjoyable when you can really just have a very nice driving experience by having a good tire, and you're safe on doing it too. So and have better performance. So
I'd say what I've found is that, generally speaking, again, for the use case that most people find themselves in for a hunt rig, your truck, as it came from the factory, is probably capable of handling it. Let's say you've got, a four-wheel drive pickup. Is probably capable of handling it. Maybe sans the tires, because maybe they're more street-oriented tires. And even then, you got to evaluate, okay, am I just going to drive down a gravel road and park in a parking space? In which case, you're probably fine altogether. You don't even need to change anything, unless you want to change for aesthetics and all that stuff, personal preference. But if you're strictly speaking, like, I'm worried I won't have the performance, then at least upping to like an all-terrain, and they probably make an all-terrain in either the same tire size that you currently have, or the truck that you got came with a mild off-road package, so to speak, which basically just kind of had like an off-road tire, which if it's any different in size is got to be very marginal at all, unless you're talking about like, okay, I have a base Toyota Tacoma, and I'm gonna like try and put the TRD Pro that's $35,000 more. I'm gonna try and put all that stuff on it. But that's what I found. Like you should, if you go to an all-terrain tire in a similar size, you should be able to tackle whatever you're trying to tackle. But if you start going bigger, and this is what I'm getting at, I've seen too many people make a lot of. They're really trying to save money. Ultimately, they've got a tire in mind and they've got a look in mind that they want to achieve because they're like, yeah, I want big old tires, man. And then they start doing all these kind of like cheap tricks to make that work. And then in reality, they've kind of got the look, but everything else had to suffer for it. And, again, if that's your personal preference and you're going for an aesthetic, then great, I won't stop you at all. But if you are that guy who's really genuinely concerned about performance, like, your truck will probably get it done as is with maybe a mild upgrade in tire. You don't need to go bigger. Because, otherwise, once you start doing, like, hockey puck spacers and you're doing, like cheap eBay spacers on the wheels to poke them out further, and you're doing all these weird lifts, you're doing body lifts and stuff like that. You're just doing to try and squeeze these tires in, and then every time you go at full lock with your turning, you're rubbing your tires on the fenders, or you're rubbing them on something else important. You hear all that when you try and turn in a parking lot. Or worse, when you're off-road and then your suspension goes into it goes into droop or it goes into bump where your wheels are kind of up, and then you're trying to turn at the same time and you're just shredding your fender liner. You're just causing more headache for yourself than you need to. And again, if performance and just getting where you need to go is your primary concern, I don't think I'd go through all that.
But it looks good, right?
It can look really good. I've seen some really good-looking trucks that when you actually look underneath, you're like, that's not going to get anywhere. But there is a whole lot of stuff that goes into off-roading. There's people who know far more about off-roading than I probably haven't even met them. They've forgotten more than I know. But you can get into all of it. I don't know if people want us to, or if they want a 200 level thing on tires specifically, or if you start getting into like suspension and differentials and locking this and that and all that stuff. Is kind of interesting, but
yeah, for sure.
I'd say let us know. I mean, I'm intrigued by tires. Rob, you kind of like, it's not a sexy topic. I don't know, man. Like, people spend an awful lot of time, put a lot of thought into their tires and how their tires look and how their tires perform. Yeah, I think it is a pretty sexy topic, actually.
I suppose. So when you put it that way, it does. It can really change how your vehicle looks, and that's sexy, right?
Exactly.
So I've come full circle on my position, or 180 on my position.
Tires are so hot right now.
Yeah.
Rob, Rob, if you were gonna get an off-road rig or a 4-wheel drive rig of some sort to take hunting, and you were gonna outfit it with some neat. Well, first off, what would it be? I don't know. Maybe you actually have that. I'm not sure. But what would it be? And then like what kind of tires are we talking?
I've been pretty happy with BF Goodrich and kind of their tread design and things like that. So the models that you mentioned would probably be what I'd go with. And I'd probably go with something that'd be on the lighter wheel side. I wouldn't be doing anything that would be super aggressive from like an impact standpoint or anything like that. So I'd want to have a little bit more available torque with just a lighter wheel and tire setup. But then, those BFGs have been pretty good from what I've researched and looked into on probably what I'd go with.
They are pretty baller tires.
And they look great too.
Yeah.
So there's that element of it, right?
What would they be on for you? Like what vehicle?
I'm not really sure. I
didn't mean to put you on the spot. Sorry.
No, it's a very personal topic. No, I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little bit more. I think. Yeah.
Mark's got his Tundi is what I've noticed you call it. Is that kind of like what Tundra enthusiasts call it? It would make sense to me. Tundi.
Maybe not. Maybe I just said it. Maybe somebody said it to me. It stuck. I don't know. But I like it. I've been I loved my 150 as much as everybody in the social media department tried
to
sell it. I loved my 150. I loved the 150 that I had before it. I still think they're fantastic. I really like the way they look. A little change of pace got the Tundra, or the Tundi, affectionately.
Sure.
And I do like it, man. I like that V8. It's got, we talk about looks. That thing sounds good.
It does have a nice, I do like the sound of Tundras.
It's got a little, you step on it.
The amount of times my ears have perked up to a car starting in a parking lot only to find that it's like just a Tundra.
Yeah,
like,
just a Tundra.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
What you got called out once though in a spaghetti shootout. I recall Ryan specifically calling out your golf cart tires.
That's right. It came with, and I just I bought the truck, so it came with tires. I'm like, those are good enough, but it really is it deserves better.
See, I know that you won't go with the Yokies, I'll call them.
Yeah.
You won't go with those because they don't look aggressive enough.
If I was gonna pick right now, either the General Grabber AT2s or the BFG KO2s.
They're the ATX now, I think, the General Grabbers.
Okay, the ATX.
I think as
that's
of
right.
now
They
they've
did
got
change.
like the ATX, and that's a sexy looking tire.
So those would be the kind of the two that I'd pick between.
And we have proven that Generals can jump.
And they can jump, that's my barometer.
Will it jump? That is the question.
How big of a gap did you guys generate there?
Well, the front wheels definitely had a bigger gap than the back wheels.
Okay.
We'll just clear that up. But
Yeah.
I'd say the front wheels got a good...
Talking like 6 inches, 18 inches?
I think we were like between
it's like
6
a
and
foot?
8 inches off the ground.
Okay.
Let's somewhere.
All I can
What is
picture-
that? I'm actually have a good judgment. That was about a foot, and I said 6 inches.
Oh, I bet you had a foot.
Maybe,
easily.
yeah, okay,
I
it
mean,
was
you look
about
at the picture. It's the front end is
it's
up there.
Yeah.
It's up there.
All I can think about is Napoleon Dynamite. He's like, did you cut like whatever?
Like 3 feet of air.
3 feet of air.
Should recreate that with that skit with
Let's
like
do it.
the Hilux or something.
We should.
Like that.
Mark just standing outside
like
of his house.
Sweet
in
little ramps.
Northern Utah, just staring and and then we'll take a block out of the middle of the ramp and send him at it. And
Bam. And with that,
on that note,
have we covered everything in our 101 tires?
I think
Do you
so.
want to
Rob?
hear
Rob, did we
200
miss
level?
anything?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I will give a shout out for all-weather tires. It's kind of a new category that I have been more of a fan of lately, specifically for folks that don't want to run a dedicated summer and winter setup. Those, if you remember I was talking about all-season tires at the beginning here.
Yeah.
And those are skewed more towards warmer climates.
You're off the all-season. You're on the all-weather.
All-weather, skewed a little bit more towards the colder weather, but have no problem running into the warmer summer months. Just aren't as good of a performance standpoint, a little bit faster wear, but pretty good tread wear warranties on those as well. So that's something to look at. But what's nice with those all-weathers is you get, at least for just kind of a normal over-the-road tire, they're really nice from a ride comfort, noise, traction, and wet and dry, pretty good.
Yeah.
But they've got that Three Peaks winter rating, which is really nice. And so I've run those for 3 winters now, and comparing them to dedicated winter tires that I've run on the same vehicle, they've performed maybe about 80% as well as a dedicated set of winter tires, but then you don't have to have the second set of wheels and tires, or you don't have to take them somewhere and get them swapped on the same week, take your summers and winters and get them swapped. So that's just kind of, I guess, a notable mention. If you find something you're primarily just going to be on road, I've been really pleasantly surprised with those all-weather tires that have come out.
I bet they get better gas mileage, or your car gets better gas mileage with those too, or with you maybe EV mileage. But anyway, then dedicated winters, because dedicated winters are usually kind of heavy carcass.
Yeah,
and then most of the winter, the roads are cleared. It's just cold as heck.
Exactly, and that's kind of the thing I found myself thinking about a lot was, man, these winter tires are awesome when there's 6-8 inches of snow on the ground I need to get through, but I'm giving up a lot of dry braking in the cold with these compared to an all-weather tire or some of the specific all-season tires that are skewed more towards that colder temperature rating, which I think just inherently bled or migrated into this all-weather category. So fun fact for those out there that are looking for more of a over-the-road tire. The all-weathers are nice. I've been happy with those. I just put a set of those on my wife's Atlas and a set of those on my car too. So
Very nice.
yeah,
That is a fun fact.
Cool, man. I like it.
Thank you, sir.
my pleasure.
I like to cover in that 3 Peaks rating too. I don't know if we hit on that yet or not.
We
so.
also didn't get into treadwear warranties, which is kind of an interesting wormhole.
Oh, yeah.
But,
I was doing a little reading on that too, because like in some ways it's good, but in some ways, it's
Then
like if you're like particularly if you're looking for like a mud terrain or something like that, like what are you sacrificing performance for longevity?
There's two different things. There's the treadwear rating, which is generally like A, AA, AAA,
Right.
or then you've got the treadwear warranty, which is what the manufacturer is going to prorate you on the next set if you wear through them faster than what they're warranted for.
And that even has caveats with it, though, because if you go through making a bunch of other modifications that would actually then cause accelerated tire wear, or something else even kind of would cause accelerated tire wear, you can run into issues, right?
Yeah, it largely depends on who you're having install your tires and then the manufacturer. And so there's some discretion there. I'm not going to plug any specific tire shop on the podcast unless you'd really want me to, but I've had really good luck going to a place and it's a bigger company over the past 10 years, and they've been really good with honoring a treadwear warranty or just any of their like road hazard stuff that's happened. And I was like, I remember the first time I went in there and I had like all of my paperwork, all my records that I've been keeping. It's like, here's when I changed my tires, like, because I was rotating them on my own. It's like, here's the pattern that I did, here's the mileage, like, here's what the tread depth was at this point in time. And it's like I came in with a proverbial binder, and the guy's like, "Oh, did you buy the tire here?" I was like, "Yep." It's like, "Okay, well, it'll be $12 for a new tire." I was like, "What?"
I did all this work.
I was like, you don't need to check on like all my math and like all this stuff. He's like, "Nah, nope, just give me the key, and here's the charge for it, here's the disposal fee, and because you bought the warranty on it, the replacement is free."
That's nice.
If you want it, and then he's like, if you want a warranty on this next one, it was like, I think it was like $32 or whatever it ended up being. So I was like, yeah, I'd probably do that. That's cool.
That's
so I was thinking it was like $48 out the door or whatever.
At that point, you like want them to check your work, but
You're like, my life's work.
But I worked so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he saw me like holding the thing. Or he saw me holding all the notes and the paper that I had, and I was like, "So you don't need this at all?" He's like, "Nope." It's like you've come here enough for stuff, and it's like, yeah, you're good. So,
well, because I'm sure that's
so nice.
exactly what he wanted to do, was go through your binder of tire care and.
Yeah, I suppose maybe it's just like, yeah, this guy is gonna be a handful to deal with all of his paperwork.
I trust your math.
Yeah,
I got this. I got the same thing too.
Right.
Yeah. Like, we got an engineer here. Yeah. Very nice.
Well, awesome, Rob. Well, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, as we alluded to, if somebody is as interested in tires as you are, Rob, a tire enthusiast, if you want to hear more about tires, if you want that 200 or 300 level tire podcast where we get into even more stuff, because it feels like every time we try to wrap this up, we think of like one more tire thing to cover. That. So let us know. And let me know what I think I'm going to go with a set of ATs. Let me know which ones I should get. Comment below.
Why not? All right. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.